Hello, so you all know what this is, I assume. This is in fact indeed the lump of potato. And because we tend to save the seed of potatoes from a potato itself, you keep one of the little potatoes back every year when you harvest your crops in autumn. These are probably somehow directly genetically linked to those very self-same potatoes that were growing by most of the Irish population when the famine hit Ireland and blight came into Ireland. And I really like to think of this. In the Irish Seed Savers, what we're primarily concerned with is food. Because in this world, you know, we kind of forget sometimes that food is in fact the most important things. We live in a time of such abundance. You look around at this beautiful landscape today, and I mean, we can look at it and think it's so beautiful. You know, it's a nice sunny day. We've probably all got some food in our rucksacks, a bit of water, everything we need. We're not going to starve to death on the way into Louisburgh. And what I find so incredible is when I look around these hills and imagine that people actually had to grow their food in this kind of landscape. You know, it's kind of the harshest landscape you could imagine to have to grow food, and that people were pushed to doing that. I can remember vividly the first time I saw old potato ridges. It wasn't so far from here, on the hills just outside Killary Harbour. And I registered that fact that people grew food in these kind of places, and only people pushed to extremes would even dream of growing food. Here today, you know, nobody's up there in this landscape having to provide themselves and a huge family with the food they need. But that's the sad reality of what happened then in the famine. And, you know, any kind of pain that people go through, whether it's a cultural people or whether it's just you individual, the pain is bearable in the future if you learn the lesson and take on what has been gone through in the past. And my biggest fear at the moment, I think, is that perhaps here we are 7 generations down from the people of the famine, that we haven't really taken on that lesson, that you cannot just depend on one crop for your survival, that you need to have biodiversity. You need to have as much diversity as you possibly can, so that in the likelihood of 1 crop failing or 2 crops or even 3 crops failing, you will still have many, many other crops. And I was thinking about today, you know, what would I say, and I felt a bit of a fraud coming in here, because I'm not a native Irish, and here I am going to talk about Irish food security and the lump of potato. But kind of put it into perspective a little bit. You know, neither does the potato come from Ireland. It is a non-native of Ireland. Yet imagine Irish cuisine without the spud, you know, but in fact it came from South America. And nearly all of our food that we regularly eat, the plant food, the crop food, the cereals, they all come from somewhere else. There is almost nothing that is native to Ireland, or indeed most of Northern Europe. It all comes from the tropics. So this rich abundance of food that we of the 21st century can eat, can go to the supermarket and buy off the shelves, has come from somewhere else in the first place. And when I think about where people are hungry today, you know, it is in fact those self-same places, a lot of it in the tropics, a lot of it in sub-Saharan Africa, where actually most of our food originated. And it seems a huge irony that we sit here with such abundance, having grown such an amazing amount of different foodstuffs from those original plants. And a lot of the people there are in that same position that people in Ireland were in 150 years ago, in that they didn't have the food to feed their families, to feed their children. And it's just unjustifiable in a world of such abundance that people and children can still be going hungry and still be dying from hunger and starvation. And we've all know the legacy that leaves behind in people. You know, it's terrible. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And I know, you know, that the Native American Indians, they came over a few years ago, didn't they? And the people that had to walk the Trail of Tears. Talked about, you know, their pain, and I always think of the Native Americans' wisdom, and they say always make a decision that will last for 7 generations. Base all your decisions that you make about the world for 7 generations to come. And I think, you know, that now we're probably around about the 7th generation down from people that died of starvation or had to emigrate in the famine. And I put this idea to a friend of mine, an Irish friend, and she said, well, look at the Celtic tiger. It's no wonder they gorged. So we have to now bring that back into perspective so that we are leaving something behind us for all our descendants, for our, the descendants that are coming 7 generations after us, for our children, our grandchildren, everybody's children, not just mine. And my hope is that we leave a world that is rich in diversity, that has enough food for everyone, that has hundreds of crops. Do you know, in the world there are 30,000 different crops that we could be eating. 30,000. We kind of regularly, across all the countries, eat about 7,000. And for the most part, most of us confine ourselves to a mere 20 crops of the 30,000. If 2 or 3 of those crops fail in a big way, then a lot of people starve. The whole world, most of the world's food comes from just 3 crops: maize, rice and wheat, which is not dissimilar to the situation that was going on in Ireland 150 years ago. All of those things need vast amounts of oil to produce them, to produce the abundance we have. If we don't have oil, it would be very difficult to have those same foodstuffs in such abundance. So we are in a position again where we have decisions to make about which way we're going, which way our world is going, the choices we can make in our own lives. And one of the things is that food is so important. We can do without every camera, every iPod, every computer, every car. We can live without those, but we cannot live without food. Nobody can. It is the most important thing. We are, a world of gardeners now. It's not, the world is not wild. 70% of the land in the world is under human management. It is managed to grow us food. So I would really like to leave behind me a world that is full of gardens, rich in diversity. We talk about conservation. We talk about conservation of the great sites of the world, of great buildings in the world, of the tropical rainforests, but we rarely talk about the conservation of our food, our crops, our domesticated crops that we all depend on to survive. So this is my world where I want to conserve as huge a diversity of these crops so that we never have to face a situation again now or in the future where people will die because they're dependent on one foodstuff. Okay.